Okay, hi all, welcome back. In continuing on with the overhead apportionment or job costing question, we're going to move on to actually pricing a job now. And in order to do that, because the 2007 question I think that we're working on doesn't have a job costing element to it, we're going to move on to the 2002 question, which you have already started. So you have already hopefully done part A and part B, and we're going to do part C now, which is compute the selling price of job number 999. Now, one thing to say about this, if I go back to part B for a start, it said calculate a suitable overhead absorption rate for each department. Now, I said to you that the rule when you're calculating an overhead absorption rate is to use or to choose an overhead absorption rate either per direct labor hour or per machine hour, depending on whatever is the most dominant activity. If there tends to be more machine hours in this particular department, use a machine hour overhead absorption rate. If there tends to be more labor hours in a particular department, use a labor hour overhead absorption rate. Okay, but I also mentioned that in the exam papers, the solution you see may not be using that rule, but I want you to continue to use that rule anyway, because it is correct and you will always get full marks using that rule. And I'll explain when I'm back why the Department of Education or the SEC chooses to ignore the rule sometimes. Okay, so first of all then, I have done part B. I'll just show you here the bit that I've done. Yours should say something similar. The total overheads for each of the departments was 337,000 for manufacturing, 174,000 for polishing, and 115,000 for packing. And then if we look at the question, we notice in the manufacturing department, there's 80,000 labor hours, 30,000 machine hours, so we should be using the labor hours. Polishing, there's more labor hours than machine hours, so we'll use the labor hours. And in packing, there's more labor hours than machine hours, so we use the labor hours again. So we're going to divide the overheads by 80,000, 60,000 and 20,000 respectively. So we've done that here. Dividing by 80,000 gave me 421 per direct labor hour. Dividing by 60 gives me 290 per direct labor hour, and dividing by 20,000 gives me this 575 per direct labor hour. Now, as I say, in the exam papers, in the manufacturing side of it, they divided by 30,000 and they got a per machine hour. They also showed what you would get though. If you look at the solutions, they showed this 421 that you would get if you used direct labor hours, because it is also correct and acceptable. In fact, I would say more correct. But then in the next part, in part C, you need to use these overhead absorption rates, and they used not the 421 per direct labor hour, but the other figure that they got per machine hour. So we're going to use this one here because it's perfectly correct, but just be warned that it will look different to the solution that you'll see if you look up examinations.ie. Okay, so let's get started with it. So for a start, it says compute the selling price of job number 999. So as a title, and again, this is management accounting. Titles aren't as rigid as in financial accounting, so some suitable title will do. I'm just going to say job number 999. That'll do. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to put down, I suppose, the information that they already give us about the costs of job number 999. So in here it says job number 999 has just been completed. The details are manufacturing, direct materials, polishing, direct materials. So we're going to have the cost of direct materials will be our first line in this document. So I'll go down one line here, just direct materials. Okay, and our direct materials, we already saw there was in one department they used 7,500 worth of materials, in another department they used 2,800. So we'll put both those figures here as workings. 500 plus 2,800. Okay, and we'll just have one column of figures down here in the end. So the two of them together is 10,300, isn't it? 10,300. Okay, that's all the materials. The next thing, they tell us how much direct labor was used in each department, or the cost of the direct labor that was used. So we paid our workers 850 euros for the work that was done in the manufacturing department, this much in polishing and this much in packaging. So again, we'll just have a direct labor. Again, we'll just put the workings in a bracket here, and we'll put the total amount over here. So it was 850 euros rather, plus 3,900, plus 1,500. If we add the three of them together, what are we talking about? 4, 5, 4, 6, 250, I'm inclined to say. 250, and you know what, I'll leave a bit of space actually, because we are going to get into the decimals later on in this question, so I'll just put 2 decimal places for cent over there. Okay, so, and maybe is this 2002, so we're talking about euros. Yeah. Okay, so next then, that's all the direct costs we have there. The indirect costs, or the overheads, is what we must account for next. So if we want to put as a kind of a heading here, overheads. Okay, and we have overheads from each of the 3 departments, so we'll put each of the departments: manufacturing, polishing, packing. Okay, and so this is where we're going to use our overhead absorption rates that we worked out earlier, because they're overhead absorption rates, isn't it? So calculate the amount of the cost of the overheads for this particular job. So for manufacturing, we have an overhead absorption rate of 421 per direct labor hour. So how many direct labor hours did we use in the manufacturing department for this job? 20 direct labor hours. Now don't worry that there were 50 machine hours. Okay, when we're working out our overhead absorption rate, we're looking at what's the most dominant throughout the year, not in this particular job. Okay, so don't worry that this is bigger than this. If there's a direct labor hour overhead absorption rate, then we're going to take the figures for direct labor from the job when working out the cost of the overhead. So there were 20 direct labor hours in that manufacturing department for this job, and we're going to multiply it by the 421, which is what we worked out to be the overhead absorption rate per direct labor hour. Okay, so multiplying them together is 842, isn't it? Okay, or wait, no, 8420, I suppose. I better not get ahead of myself. Okay, 8420. For the polishing department, if we look, polishing department again was per direct labor hour. In fact, they were all per direct labor hour. The rate was 290. How many direct labor hours were worked in the polishing department? We can see that there were 90 of them. So it's going to be 90 multiplied by 290 per direct labor hour in the polishing department. I might need to get the calculator out for this. 1 sec now. 261. Okay, so 261. And finally, in the packing department, they had 25 labor hours. Sorry, this job spent 25 labor hours in the packing department. So 25 multiplied by the rate per direct labor hour, 575. And again, if we just calculate that, that's 143.75. Okay, and at this point we can total up all of our costs. Okay, so add the whole lot of these together and you get, that's 95 anyway. What have we got? 10, 18, 3, 17, isn't it? So 17,038.95. Now that is the total cost of this job, isn't it? So I'll call this production cost. Okay. However, the question asks us to compute the selling price of the job, not the total cost of it, but the selling price. So we need a bit more information in order to calculate the selling price. And here is the extra information that we need. Underneath it says the company budgets for a profit margin of 20% of sales. That means that your profit is going to be 20% of the price that you charge for the job. And here's how we work this out. We say, if you have the cost of your job and you add on the profit, that gives you the selling price, isn't it? So for instance, like if something costs you 100 euros to make, you want to make a profit of 20 euros, then you say 100 plus 20 is 120. That's going to be what I charge for it. That's my selling price for this product, isn't it? So if you add the profit onto the cost, you get the selling price. Now, you don't have to put this in here where the next thing I'm going to write, but if the selling price is 100% and the profit is 20% of the selling price, and if we're adding the profit onto the production cost to give us the selling price, well, 20% plus what percent is going to give me the 100%? It must be plus 80%. In other words, the cost must be 80% of the selling price if the profit is 20% of the selling price. Okay, so whenever they give us the profit margin of 25%, it means that the cost would be 75%. Profit margin of 30%, then the cost would have to be 70%. Okay, so whenever it's a profit margin we're talking about, that places the selling price at the 100% mark. Okay, so the next thing is, if this is 80% and we want to know what 20% or 100% is, there are different mathematical methods to get to the answer there. One of them might be divide this by 80 and then multiply your answer by 20, because if you divide by 80 you get 1%, multiply by 20 to give you 20%. That's probably the most straightforward, I would say. I would say you could also look at it, well, 20% is a quarter of 80%, so you could just divide this by 4 and it'll give you this amount here. So whichever way you do it is fine, whichever mathematical method that you're most comfortable with is fine. So if you did that, this would turn out to be 4,259.74. And then we know that if this 100% is 80 plus 20, all we have to do is add these two together and we have our selling price, and that would work out to be 21,298.69, isn't it? Yeah, it looks right to me. And we're done. That's job number 999, the selling price calculated.